All right. Or Ian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I don't know where this podcast starts. I'll probably have to rewatch it and figure at some point during our preamble, probably like cut it in there and then suddenly it goes in here. Who knows? That's my problem to deal with. Yeah. So we met at an event called Fuck Up Nights, which was it's such a great event because it focuses on not success stories, but on failure stories.
Yeah, that's really what attracted me to it, in the sense that like so many podcasts, magazine articles, blog posts, Instagram fucking posts, all this shit is always like, here's how well I did, or here's the success I had, or here's how I went from, we were an app about checking into buildings and now we're Instagram with $1 billion buyout from Facebook. Like they always kind of lack in showing like the hard like parts. They always talk about the hard work and the raising of the money, but I'm like, raising money, like where's this shit coming from? But when you talk about the failure of like, we tried this, it didn't work, we put our own money in, we lost 80 grand. Like those are the stories that interest me a lot more, in the sense of like, you find out what these people go through on the personal side, whether like it affects like their relationships, their marriages, their family, their own mental health. So much of that shit goes into like being part of failure. So you can learn a lot from that kind of shit. And they're really inspiring stories, some of the ones that I've heard, and they motivated me to like start taking my own journey and pushing myself outside of my own comfort zone too, with doing these thoughts.
Yeah, and the thing about that is like a common misconception is, you know, like entrepreneurs in the business world tend to be very optimistic, and I think the misunderstanding is that optimism means ignoring negativity, ignoring the scary stuff. When in reality, it's more like, despite the negative stuff, despite the mistakes, I'm going to endure, push through it, analyze it, and then continue going through it. It's 99% of the experience.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So I mean, like, just because we're on this topic, how'd you get involved with, were you volunteering at the event? I think you were.
Yeah, I'm one of the volunteers. I had ran a show 5 years prior, and the month I had like closed my show down after like completing everything I wanted to accomplish with it. I still wanted to be involved in events because I was just so like hungry for the microphone, hungry to just use all this skill set that I built up. So when I went to the show, I was like, this is great. It's really well run. It could always be better. Let me give all my assets and skills into this. So I was like, hey, can I be part of this? And just started volunteering from there. So I've been doing it for like 2.5 years now. And it's been nearly 3 years.
Is that like since pretty close to when the Toronto branch like opened up, right?
Yeah. I think I came in like 6 months after it started up, something like that, 6-7 months. Yeah.
And we had a bit of a conversation at the event about your, you do a lot, you seem to be kind of an eclectic guy, if that's a good description, which is pretty normal of creatives. So you do graphic design, you do public speaking, you teach people, you run workshops on presentations and public speaking skills as well, right?
Yeah, it's I call it dual artistry, in a sense that like I'm a creative in the fact that like I create graphics, designs, etc., and then I also create works of art in another sense of like, whether it be poetry, storytelling, comedy, performance, custom writing. And then through both of those crafts, I learned how to like master stages, master pitches, master presentations, and then started teaching workshops, ones to like introduction to like slam poetry to youth, and then mastering pitches and presentations and public speaking to adults or entrepreneurs or artists or other business owners that want to just learn how to take I've been building this product for 5 years. How do I condense that down to a 3-minute, here's what my product is pitch? So it kind of focuses on that. And then just the art of public speaking is such a fantastic skill to have. Like when I ran my show, it was all youth based, and you'd see these like 10th graders come in that like the most shy, awkward, nervous, nerdy kid in the world. And suddenly they learn how to dominate a stage and perform to an audience and entertain the crowd and command attention. You're just going like, wow, that's the kid like you never expected. And now they've got 50 people like leaned in like, what's he going to say next? Like, it's mind-blowing what you can do with that kind of stuff. And it translates to dating, family, relationships, your ability to do good in jobs, school, whatever it might be, through presentations, whatever the fuck. Like, it's public speaking is a fantastic skill to have, and something, definitely a fear worth getting over.
Yeah. And public speaking, communication, like these things, I mean, that's oftentimes, well, actually, I think fundamentally that's what makes us human. And these are things that are not taught in school. So when did you realize that this is something that you really wanted to lean into?
Oh man, when I was a kid, I was just a loudmouth, fucking class clown, all that kind of stuff. And even just the other day, I'd found, I think it was my 4th grade report card. It says like, Ian is often too excited and he wants to speak out in class and da-da-da-da-da. He used to take that and calm himself down. I'm like, fuck that. Are you out of your mind? Like, don't tell any kid to calm down his creativity. Let me have outbursts. Let me entertain. Like all the things that I am so talented at now and are such an integral part of my personality, these public school teachers are trying to close down, shut down. Please don't do that. Don't disturb. And I understand that to a degree because they have a teaching environment they're trying to maintain, but this is what makes me me. And to have them kind of silence that sort of stuff is upsetting. And when I'm looking back at this, I'm like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. But yeah, it was always from a young age, I had this ability to just entertain and speak. And it's just something I kind of crafted over the years, like being that center of attention, commanding attention to not just for my own self, for my own ego, which is I'm sure a little part of it, but to create laughter, create smiles, create entertainment is always my favorite thing. Like every given moment is like, how can I make this more fun for everyone else? It's always my thought process. So that just kind of paired up with like, the only way to do that is to be the one on the stage, to be the one performing, to be the one telling the story, to be the one with that attention on them. And then I can give them that sweet, sweet joy.
And was it difficult when you first started, or was it always something that's kind of natural to you to enjoy the stage presence?
It was very natural. Like I was just used to being an entertainer in that sense from a young age, and like going to parties would be like the best way to practice anything like that. So like you tell a 10, 15-minute story that like gets everyone pulled in. They want to hear what's going to happen. You find ways to like bend the story to your favor where like it has these ups and downs and lows and highs. And by the end, you're like, everyone's laughing their head off. That was just essentially development for like how to write performances and how to like condense that down to either a 3-minute pitch presentation or a 3-minute slam poem. You kind of learn to harness what little elements connect with audiences, what makes them laugh, what makes them go, oh, I've had that experience as well, which kind of gives that whole relation to someone. All shit was just practice essentially for improving upon that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that's interesting because I find that people who are naturally gifted at a lot of things, they typically have no idea how to teach others to do what they do because it's a lot of unconscious competence. So you mentioned you do teach people how to have these kind of skill sets. And it sounds like it's a lot of kids who are completely on the opposite end of being public speakers. And then they have this experience where they do become it. So like tell me about that journey. Were you also like born with a gift to teach? Did you have to figure that out? Like
that's a good question.
How are you able to transfer that knowledge?
Well, I guess one of the first things you said is like, you do end up with like a lot of kids that are not the kind you'd expect to get on stage. And then the opposite end of the kids that are like the class clown, the entertainer, the one that wants to like focus that energy. And you kind of get a both sense. Like you do have these kids that like can outshine, like they're naturally good speakers. You're like, if you can just tighten this and aim this in a direction, it's going to be so much better. And then the kids that they have something to say, but they're always so reserved, shy, anxiety ridden, whatever it might be. When they kind of learn to get over those fears, one of my favorite quotes from Will Smith, and I'm sure he stole it off someone even better than him, was the best things in life are on the other side of fear. So you kind of push yourself out of that comfort zone, whatever it might be. You do discover that the best things truly are on the side. I keep seeing this example hundreds of times over through little experiences I have, whether it be like fixing the electrical wiring in this house. It's fucking afraid of getting electrocuted and dying. Didn't die. Totally felt better by the end of it. So it's little when you push yourself out of these comfort zones, this makes such a difference. But yeah, with teaching, I guess had that knack for getting people's attention, right? And storytelling. So I would just use that to my advantage where like every time I'm teaching, I'm giving hundreds of real life examples within that. I'm like, hey, one time this happened and here's how it all played out, whether it's for the good or for the bad. It kind of shows examples of everything rather than like being so textbook and using case studies or whatever it might have been. It's been a while since I've been in school. I don't remember how they even teach at all. But I just found for me, like the best things are always to try it myself and learn through that. Like whether it be using technology and figuring out how an app works or using your voice and figuring out how an audience works. It was just kind of pushing yourself into that and giving it a shot because everyone's going to suck the first time. Everything is terrible. Your opinion is so much higher of what you should be able to do versus what you actually can do when you start off. And just taking those tries, going to open mics, hundreds of them, shows, parties, presentations, anything you can to like just keep practicing whatever craft it might be. Juggling to fucking public speaking just takes time to build up.
Yeah. Something I like to tell people is if you aim for the ground, you'll never miss. And it's funny because
like having no expectations and you have a great time. You're like, well, that was way better than I expected because I expected nothing.
Yeah. And not just that, but half the work is learning how to aim.
Mm.
Right. And then if you can hit the ground, it's like, oh, I'll just aim a little higher. But then a lot of times what happens is like you said, there's that high expectation of self. And the reality is our capabilities are a lot lower than our expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like this, we judge ourselves and then we just stop ourselves from starting or actually doing anything.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? You look at instead of looking at step 1, you look at step 10. You're like, oh man, that's going to take me a year and a half to get there. And I don't know what step 1 through 8 or 1 through 9 are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to just quit on it before you even kind of get a sense of what you could possibly do with it.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because you're not just like a designer or a communicator. You're also a hyper creative. You mentioned poetry and some of the other artistic works that you're doing. And just about every hyper creative I know, people who are studying the arts and that kind of stuff, they don't do what you're doing. They judge themselves a lot and they produce a lot of great content that they never reveal to the world because they think it's not good enough.
I got hundreds of it.
Okay, so you're not unaffected by this issue as well then?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Like just recently on my Instagram, Ian made it. I had taken a bunch of logos that I just never shared with the world and was like, hey, like, here's what I made in 2006 for my friend's wedding gift. Here's what I made in 2014 for a small little like studio I had known my friend ran. Just wanted to just take a bunch of things I never shared and put them out there just for the collection of the likes, or just to show run people like, hey, I'm still a designer. Hey, I can still do this. Here's some things that only 5 people ever saw. I might as well get a few more eyes on it and just show that like, this is something I can do and something I'm very proud of. And these are things that never saw the light of day in a sense, or like they're hanging in my friends' basements in their house and only their kids see it when they go out and play the arcades.
Mm-hmm. So you said 2006. So it took 14 years before you actually put it online and exposed it to other people.
No
14 years.
Was about 2006 sounds about right.
Which is crazy when you put in numbers, right? It's like, 2000. In my mind, 2006 wasn't that long ago. Then I go, wait a second. That was... it's kind of nuts. I'm like literally double the age that I was almost since that time. So tell me about the experience. Like, what was your attitude like in 2006 with regards to showing this content, and what changed, or what series of things had to change for you to be open to sharing it now?
I think when I was younger, I was way more egotistical about whether it be from my own self, how I looked, how I presented myself. And then my work kind of reflected that too. I was like, look at this, I'm the best, I'm the fucking greatest. Look at this amazing thing. Like, look at the logic, look at the wordplay, look at the flow, look at all the little things that I felt were like need to be seen. As you get older, as you go past the age of 23, you start going, oh, maybe I don't need to be a show-off dickhead. Maybe I can create and let people catch at them on their own. Like, oh, I really like the way you connected these 2 words. Oh, I like the way this logo makes me think of this and connects with the brand, whatever it might be. I just stopped being so pushy about showing them, here's why it's brilliant, here's why I'm the greatest, and just let them find it on their own. And I guess that's the way to deal with, like, also, sometimes they don't see it. They don't go, oh, wow, that's really creative. You're like, okay, fine. Like, not everyone's going to have the positive reaction you're looking for. It's always going to be a change. And what I tell people the most when I'm teaching these classes is, you will want feedback so badly on how you did for your presentation, your poem, your joke, whatever it might be. And most people just go, oh yeah, that was nice. They'll give you a 0 reply. That's basically saying nothing at all, because they're not getting into the details of it. They're not saying, even if they didn't like it, they'll say, oh, that was nice, lovely, they'll clap, whatever it might be. But finding true feedback is such a difficult thing. So when people do give me, like, whether it be negative feedback or a little bit more detail, it sucks to hear sometimes, but I appreciate it a little bit more, because then you go, oh, I see how they're seeing it. I never saw it that way. So me from 2006 to me now, I guess just finding a better balance of not being an egotistical show off and just trying to be a little bit more calm with what I have. But I've got all these creations for a long time that, in my mind, were very good quality work. So I'm like, you know what, I might as well show them. There was no Instagram back then. Facebook was such a brand new item that I didn't have the thought process to, like, share my design work on there. A portfolio website was something that was so brand new at the time. The only time people saw this stuff was, like, in the job interview. They'd see it in pages.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you mentioned becoming less egotistical. So what were some of the events or mechanisms that reduced your high view of self?
Fucking reality checks, probably. You think, okay, I had a good example. So in my class, I felt like I was maybe in the middle for like design skills, abilities, my grades, etc. And then when I went to a job interview, the teacher picked me in the top 3 guys for this one advertising firm in the city, Cassette.
Mhm.
He sent us down. I was like, wow, like I'm against these guys, like Johnny and Martin and this other dude who I forget the name of. And I was like, I didn't feel like I was in their league, but my teacher thought so. We went to the job interview, and the way our school prepared us, we all showed the exact same thing. Here's our magazine we worked on. Here's our CD cover we created. Here's our one other third font-based project. I showed those things. Those guys all had the exact same items, but because they were like beyond, they all had like, oh, here's a Flash website I created that I didn't have to do for a project, but I did it anyway. Oh, here's an actual physical product I made of like a little board game. Like they all had something extra, and I was just following the template someone handed me. And so when I came out of there, 2 out of those guys got the gig, got the job. I got nothing, and the other guy ended up getting a spot somewhere else, another agency. And I felt so defeated in the sense that I was like, I thought I was this hot shit. I followed all the templates, all the rules, all the tutorials, and I didn't go beyond. I didn't take that extra step to show like, I really am creative. Here's things I made in my free time. Instead of drinking and playing Smash Brothers with my friends, here's what I created with my design skills.
Mhm.
That was like definitely a reality check of like, oh, I'm not as good as I think I am. And if I'm as good as I think I am, I better fucking go way beyond that and actually show that I do have these insane skills that I seem to think I have. So that was probably the beginning of like the humbling of it all.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because you actually took that feedback and were humble enough to realize, okay, I am actually not as good as I think I am. And if I want to be as good as I'd like to be, these changes need to happen based on how I lost to these other guys. Yeah, on the other hand, a lot of times people, they don't learn that lesson. They just think, oh, those judges were terrible. I'm actually the best. I'm just going to keep going. Did you? so like,
yeah,
like
I've seen that too.
yeah. And well, a lot of my OCAD friends are kind of like that. Yeah. You didn't happen to go to OCAD, did you?
To school, right? I'd feel like
Yeah.
even more like I'm really a fucking artist. I went to OCAD. It cost me even more several grand than your Durham college, which I went to.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That probably explains the humility. Because a lot of the people I know who are in these creative fields, they did go to the prestigious schools. And then that would, do you think that, okay, so my assumption is that because you did go to a very, well, compared to, in terms of brand names, a very almost like run-of-the-mill technical school, do you think that helped with your attitude? Like if you went to a prestigious school with this name of, oh, look how awesome we are because of this logo that we study under.
Yeah, if I went, like, I think about OCAD a lot now. I'm way beyond like being a fucking college student at this point. But I'm like, yeah, like I would feel very prestigious, and I talk to OCAD students, and they feel like, oh, I'm not even really an art student. I didn't go to this art school, but I look at it as like, my program was called advertising. It had design, sales, and marketing. I focused on design and got elements of all the other stuff. I essentially graduated with an advertising degree, but I was focused as a graphic designer. When I applied there, they didn't even ask for a design portfolio. Every other program that was like OCAD or graphic design at Humber or whatever was like, oh, show us your oil paintings, your statues, your this, your that. I'm like, never painted a thing in my life. I know how to just do layouts, type, photography, build websites, etc. I knew design, but I didn't know the true art form of it. So like if I went to OCAD, I would have got eaten up and chewed the fuck out. I would have failed for sure. But luckily I went to a program that gave me other elements to shine in that I could use my skill sets in, and then I still came out and could focus on graphic design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. It's more humbling to go to a non-recognized as an art school in a sense. It's like, oh, okay, not that big of an artist still.
Yeah. And now we're like basically like a decade. I'm guessing that you've been graduated for like a decade almost?
I'm 32, so yeah, it sounds right. I was done by like 22. So yeah, oh shit, 10 years. Goddamn.
Yeah. Because it's really interesting. I'm thinking like, okay, so in retrospect, it seems like that is actually a better experience for not just you, but I'm guessing a lot of other students too.
We get a lot of students that like, I'm sure everyone sees this in their programs, but from like 90 kids, and then second year down to 60 kids, and then my third year down to 30 kids. And people like paid for those programs, and then they're working jobs totally unrelated. Even if they graduated, they didn't end up going into sales, marketing, or design. That kind of stuff a lot. But
yeah.
Yes, what was the question?
No, just some thoughts. I don't know. I might edit this out.
I was like, yeah, what happened to people?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Let's see now. So, I don't think we talked about no, actually we briefly talked about design. So, 'cause one of the things that I'm really curious in, a lot of times people who are involved in hyper creatives, they can't really do design work. And those who are doing design work, they can't really do the hyper creative stuff. Like it's either one or the other. So where would you fit in that spectrum? Because you seem to be doing both.
I generate ideas all day long, like whether it be from little things like wordplay to names of business ideas to events I want to run to like a good example was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago actually now. I was going to this event called Moose Man, which is like a Burning Man-esque Ontario-based festival.
Canadian Burning Man, Moose Man.
It's a very small, 300 people only in a forest, partying all weekend. But they also offer art grants. So like everyone's drinking, doing drugs, whatever. But you could also build something. So like one year they built a 25-foot tall moose, then they light it on fire. The next year they built a giant jerry can that had a bar in the middle and a rooftop deck that you could drink on, and then they burned it at the end. So they'd come up with creative shit like that. People could do any kind of art exhibit they want throughout the forest. Like one person did a whole camp based on hammocks. They had 15 hammocks out there, a hammock floating bar, all kinds of shit. I'm like, oh man, I could
hammock floating bar?
Floating hammock bar. It was sick.
I'm having a hard time bringing my mind. Do you have pictures so I can like?
Oh man, I have no photos. It was actually wood, string on both sides, so like a little bar that was essentially tied up like a hammock into the trees, and they were serving drinks. So they had all kinds of like brilliant stuff like out there in the forest. I was like, oh, okay, I can create something. And so me and my partner at the time, we had come up with a concept called lost wallets, where essentially when you find a wallet, the first thing you would do is steal all the money out of it and then go, oh, we should maybe return this wallet to the person and get their stuff back. So we wanted to like almost test society of how they would react. So we bought all these different kinds of wallets, and each one was a character. So a little girl's wallet, like an 8th grade girl who has like a list of all of her crushes inside of it, and a hair tie, and some little like whatever little children have in their wallets. We had the gambler's wallet, which was like full of poker chips and like the bus card to get to whatever casino and all kinds of stuff like that. And when they had fake money in them all too. So like if you found it and you like wanted to take the money or wanted to just see if there's money in it, you'd see a $500 bill or like bills that didn't make any sense or bills that are out of print that I just printed off a computer. So each one was this character. Those characters, we then like went and lost the wallets in the forest, and you could find it, and it had an identification of one of my friends. So if you wanted to find it, you could go then like locate that person out of the 300 people there. You then would find that person. We got way too complicated. This is way too much to try and do, but we had all the wallets of different characters. You could then find them attached to my friends. They would then say, now the game begins. You get a little pin that you could wear that's like stage 1. And you have to go do 8 other stages. So like this one says, oh, now you have to go find Victor and arm wrestle him, and he'll give you a pin. When you find Victor, you arm wrestle him. Oh, now you have to go find Courtney and ask her and give her a riddle and whatever. It just was this whole thing of like a mind game that you could play within this event. Not many people could even get to most of that stages. A lot of the wallets, like we would drop them and we'd watch people like find them. They'd pick it up like, oh, it's just too much of a commitment. Like if you're on drugs, the last thing you want to do is try and go find someone at a festival and get them their wallet back. So people would put the wallets back down, or they'd give them to the park ranger and stuff who was running the place. So the park ranger's getting calls on his walkie. He's like, oh my God, we've got a lost wallet over here. It belongs to a Dave O'Hanna. Oh, okay, yeah. Is there any money in it? Yeah, there's some money in it. How much money is in it? It's a $1,500 bill inside of this. And the dude's, because he knew about the whole project, he's losing his mind. He's like, yeah, you guys are playing such good pranks on everyone in a sense. But it was this project it was all based off of being at a festival, and this like kid who was just so stoned out of his mind was sitting next to me, and he starts digging through his wallet. And I'm like, imagine this like kid like pulling Doritos out and all this other bizarre shit and like joints out of his wallet. I was having such a good time just like imagining what like a stoner would have in his wallet. I was like, that would be such a cool project. Like, what kind of wallets do different people have? Like the traveler, the gambler, the little kid, the artist. Oh man, there's a whole pile of bunch. I've got them on my desktop. Let's see what I got here. Yeah, we created like 15 different character wallets that were then attached to all these games. But yeah, like that was just something creative I wanted to do, and I went and put it into practice. We got a small grant of $50 to buy the supplies, and I printed almost everything on my computer or my printer at work, so everything was high quality.
Yeah. Hey, $50 is a lot for art.
Yeah.
Mostly you get zero.
Wallets. Yeah. But it was such a cool way to like just test another creative element that I came up with. It wasn't graphic design. It wasn't rhyming. It was just creating this mind game and these characters people. So I was trying to find little ways to do stuff.
Okay. So that's interesting because a lot of people, well, I think some of the best artists in this world, they think like that and they probably think on another even level, but they never implement. You actually tested it out and then got the feedback and listened to stuff that happened. So that how do you decide when to act? Or tell me, I want to know kind of your experience. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that you kind of got crippled with and never acted on, and then some of the ideas where you did. Like, tell me about that experience. Like, what are the elements involved in you acting upon an idea versus being crippled by it?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess sometimes the weight feels too, especially if you're doing the things alone. That's always the most difficult. You find this idea that like either is inspired by like an event or a talk or a video you watch. You're like, yes, I want to do exactly this. You get so hyped about it, you start putting in a bit of work, and you hit that first roadblock. Maybe you can get over that one, then you hit two more, and then you're like, you know what, maybe this isn't meant to be, or maybe I don't have the chutzpah to push past this. So a great example would be 2011, I saw a poetry slam for the first time in Toronto. The room is 200 people at the Drake Hotel. It's packed. It's these beautiful storytellers. Everything about it, I was like, it's rhyming, it's stories, it's people paying attention, people giving a fuck, and it's in Toronto, and I loved it. I went home the next day. I was like, I'm going to do exactly this for York Region, where I lived at the time. I went and met with like people that ran that show. I found out exactly how to run it, what the background is, how to get involved, whatever it is can be, so I can do my own variation of it. And I thought I'd have the same success. I thought I'd put 100 people in a room who listen intently to a bunch of people tell stories. I got my one other friend involved. He's like, yeah, like he's a musician, so I've got at least someone else who can like entertain as well with me. And I would host it, and I'd have all my friends come, and I thought all these things were going to happen. I called up 3 or 4 bars. I was like, hey, I'm looking to bring a poetry slam show to your bar. What do you think? They're like, what the fuck is a poetry slam? I was like, oh man, it's this new form of entertainment where storytelling and battle and competition and judges and drinking and fun and wordplay. They're like, no, unless it's a guitar and a person singing fucking Dave Matthews cover songs, we don't want it. I'm like, cool, perfect. Click. Call the next bar. I want to bring the most epic comedy, storytelling, entertainment show to your bar. What is it? It's a poetry slam. No, thank you. Click. I'm like, oh my God, okay, that's 2. All right, let me call another one. 3rd bar. He knew what a poetry slam was. I'm like, yes, okay, my man, this is perfect. You think your manager would be interested in having this? He's like, not at all. I'm like, why? Because we have music. That's what people put in bars. They put musicians for you to talk over while you get drunk, play pool, and ramble on about whose fucking cigarettes you're gonna borrow. That was like the equation of most bars, and they didn't want to add in something that was going to require intense listening or just requiring you to not chat while you're in this location. So every bar turned it down, and my excitement for it just really faded out. You know, I was like, damn, I had like done all the design work. I created the name, branding. I was doing all the stuff that was like the fun part for me, and I was just having no success in finding a venue. And my other partner that was involved, he was losing his steam for it as well. 1 year later, I'm at an event, and this guy stands up. He's like, hey, I'm starting a poetry slam in York Region, in Unionville, called York Slam. And that was 1 year to the date of like when I had tried to start it myself, and mine had failed. I'm like, I went to him like, yes, I'm on board. I tried to do this a year ago. I couldn't get any success. How are you doing this? He's like, well, I've got a history of building shows already. I know exactly the scene. I'm from the area, He got it off the ground and running, and I joined up, and eventually I became the artistic director and ran that show. But I had just seen all these roadblocks, and it just wore me down. Because I was just by myself, it made it so much more difficult. So when you've got other people, like a team, like he had 3 other people, he then had me who was already impassioned by this. It just kept growing. And you've got the people that help like just keep that drive going for someone to talk to and bounce the ideas off. And when it's all in your head, it's so easy to get caught up or stopped or blocked or whatever it might be. So having a team of people, even with just one other person, is such a benefit at times to go from that product that is in your head to something that exists.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of that. It's quoted on the internet as an African proverb, which is kind of stupid because Africa is a really big place. It's, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Damn. It's good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fast and alone. I don't know. I can see that to some things. Less distraction.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see now. Anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I guess for, like you said, it's people looking to come out of their 9 to 5 and then get into their own work for themselves. I can talk to that experience a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. So, what year are we in? 2020 now. I guess 2 years ago, in my job, I was feeling defeated. My give a fuck level was gone. I stopped caring. I used to always be the guy who would fight with designer or fight with the salespeople, fight with anyone I could to like make sure a design gets pushed through the way it should be or the way I felt it was the strength of it. And that was like what I'd done for years. Like I would always like defend or argue my point of like why something is good. And then a point hit where everything I was creating was just getting rejected constantly by my clients. Whether it be my own personal clients I had at home for my own freelance business, and then the clients I had in my 9 to 5 job at work. These two particular men were just these very difficult to please, and they could never describe what they wanted. So everything was a shot in the dark. So I
don't know what I want, but somehow I know what I don't want. And what I don't want is every direction that you're giving me.
Yeah. They wouldn't give any hint. Like you'd say, well, would more bold help? Blue help? They would just describe feelings, emotions. Emotions of cities, because these were like city-based condo projects. He would describe to me Detroit being a very flowery city, and you know how Detroit is flowers, and Detroit is. I'm like, these are not things.
No,
Detroit.
Detroit is like
rock and roll, hip hop legends. Like all the things about Detroit, flowers were the least on my mind. So he would ask for 3D flower-based logos that are originally never seen before drawn fonts. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so difficult. And they
want a 3D logo with never before drawn fonts.
Yes.
What is that even? Okay.
Most designers, you grab fonts and then you could like use the font as your base and you could adjust little things to it to make it more unique. But he's like, they all have to be never before seen hand drawn. I'm like, I don't know how to draw a font. I can manipulate them, but I can't create fresh. And they weren't like company names. Like usual condo names are 4, 5, 6 letters. And I don't want to name any for my old company, but they're always very short and simple. This guy's company names were 7 words. City, club, apartment, Cincinnati, CBD, Detroit, like they were long-winded. So like instead of being a small, simple logo, element.
So it'd be like the Cincinnati 3rd degree CBD infused apartment condo complex.
Yeah, CBD
society.
Is Central Business District. But they were just long-winded. So like long-winded titles made it even more difficult. Everything I made with this guy, essentially what it came down to was, it was like shooting a basketball all day. Like my entire job was being a fucking basketball player. And every shot I took never went in. I'd always hit the rim. It would bounce and then miss. Oh, when I'd finally get one in, it was because like the wind took it and a bird hit the ball and it went in by chance. That was when I'd finally get a win, like 8 months into development of something. So it was very difficult, and it just made me feel like more like I'm not the designer I think I am. I'm not the creative I felt like I've been my entire life. I've now been in this career for 10 years, and I can't get a simple logo approved by a lunatic. Then to go home in my freelance job and have the exact same experience, I was like, man, this is like, all of my money is coming from 2 people, and those people don't like anything I make. So I'm like, why are they even having me do this? Like, why are they torturing me? And so it just wore me down. I stopped giving a fuck. I just agreed to whatever people said. They're like, we want it like this. I'm like, that sounds terrible. Here you go. I don't care. You can have anything you say. We want a piece of shit on the brochure cover. actually was something I had to create at one point for someone. An actual piece of alligator shit on a brochure cover.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, ridiculous. That's what my design came down to, a fucking circus of nonsense. But I was getting worn out by it, and I was being at one of the fuck up night shows, someone was describing what burnout is. And when I looked at the definitions of like the 4 facts of like burnout is these things, I was like, check, 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 check. Oh my God, I'm burnt out. And part of my mind kept saying, you can go through way worse. You could handle so much more horrible. You could do another 3 years of a bad time. But why? Why put yourself through that? Why let yourself get through that? I was already having a horrible time. I was not enjoying my life. And so I decided to leave. I went and told them, I'm done. I already have a business doing this at home. I could do this. I could still generate money from design. And I've got a secondary career built out of public speaking and running workshops and hosting events and this whole other skill set that is effortless, completely effortless for me to get on a stage and entertain people. It takes very little preparation. I've already had all the years of practice, whereas like graphic design is lots of preparation, lots of attempts, lots of trying, and then it comes down to someone going, I don't like the color yellow, so this is a piece of shit. When I speak publicly, you can only judge it on the spot, and in the end, like your overall feeling is what you base it on, not every word I said at the very moment. So I was like, okay, like I'd rather focus on something that makes me feel like $1 million versus something that makes me feel like an asshole. And so I started then focusing on that, and that becomes a whole nother journey of where do you find money in these fields? Like I was doing it to like the tune of like maybe $5,000 in a year created from public speaking. Well, now I have to make $50,000 public speaking to have like a comfortable lifestyle. That's going to be a lot more difficult. So I went from this leaving my job and being on this high of like, I started working on this podcast, and the first interview I did was with my favorite rapper ever. And I flew out to British Columbia and spoke to him and recorded him and got to go into his house. And it was just all of these like, wow, everything feels amazing. Leaving my job is the best decision ever. And then 2 months later, you're like, oh man, there's very few projects coming in. Everything is slowing down because it's January. The money is not as good suddenly. What the fuck was I thinking? Should I go back to my job? No, that crushed my heart, broke my feelings, made me super sad about design. You have to then find other elements to kind of get joy. So some of the things I started doing were projects for myself, little creative projects that were, I'm the client, I'm the creative. So I made lots of live edge shelves. I can't see them in the video, but my apartment's covered in live edge shelves. And then selling them for people as well.
Yeah.
Doing woodworking was a tangible product. Instead of a logo being something you create physically and goes on a website, making something with my hands is tangible. And like when there was fuck ups on it that I could see, I'm like, only I matter. Like I'm the person who receives it at the end. If that little scratch doesn't bother me, then it doesn't fucking matter. So I was learning a new skill set, and that became way more joy filled than what graphic design had been giving me in the last little while. Doing little projects like that to just re-invoke your creativity, and like you could, like the wallets, I made food faces, so I'd rearrange my food onto a plate, take a photo and post on Instagram. It took 10 minutes of work, and it was like the best part of my day some days, because it was just this outburst of creativity that was then getting immediate feedback. So finding little ways to do that was just making such a difference. But yeah, the journey is difficult when you go from guaranteed money to clients will pay me 3 months late. I'm dealing with a client right now that should have been paid 3 months ago. Like,
3 months is a long time to not get paid. I mean, that's
that's typical with freelance designers. Even when I send reminders, they're like, oh yeah, sorry. Like some people I'd have to like physically like go visit them, be like, hey, you didn't pay me. Like, oh, here, swipe my credit card on your little Square app. I'm like, shouldn't have had to come all the way out here to do this kind of stuff.
It's crazy because clients are busy too, and some of them are not, like, they're not respectful enough of your needs to actually just take that time out of their day. So yeah, that's definitely part of the headaches too. And it's interesting because I was thinking, as you're describing your experience with burnout, I was introduces other ideas called rust out, and it's like reverse burnout. So like if burnout is a lot of the experiences just kind of like going through the grind and then kind of losing your passion or using up too much of your mental faculties or your energy doing something that is just until you kind of just run out, you burn out, right? Rust out is like you're doing that, but then you need to be doing something else. So for a lot of creatives, like I need that creative outlet. I need to feel validated that my designs and what I see as aesthetic is actually valued. And then time and time again, these clients just, these lunatics that you described are just saying no, 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 no. And it's like, you're still burning out, but it's more like it's an inverse. It's the things that you need to do to feel alive. That's not being expressed. And now it's like you're rusting.
That's really clever. Did you come up with that?
No, I didn't come up with it. It's the book's called The Stress Effect. I heard on another podcast, and I thought that's really interesting because those are two elements of the broader category of burnout. But I've never heard of it like that. So would you say it was more of a burnout, like the overwork until you're tired, or is it more of a rust out for you?
It was a burnout because the 4 or 5 years leading up to that, I was working full time, 9 to 5, and then my 5 to 9 of my freelance. Plus doing a third thing, like all my other free time and weekends were spent running around, running events, doing shows, performing, and then being in a relationship, having to deal with your and maintaining your family and your friends and your girlfriend. These 6 factors were just so much, working essentially 3 jobs and then having 3 other factors that were important to me, just exhausted me. My free time was just always filled. I was always running around. I would do something because I'm like, we need to go to this concert. We need to go to this part of the US and check out this awesome restaurant. And I was doing so much that like, as soon as I finished, I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Like there was no appreciation for like that really good meal or that really good show or that really good whatever. It was just knocking them down as if they were a checklist of all the 100,000 things I wanted to do. Do that for 5 years straight. Oh man, it tires you out. So when I was feeling that burnout, it was because like I just been doing so much. I was like, I just need to decompress and calm down and refine myself and find out what matters to me and what I like and how to make money doing those things and see if that's feasible for me, if that's doable, if I can I do it on my own or do I have to be part of someone's company? Do I have the strength to do it on my own accord or not? And that's the journey I'm in now is, can I make the amount of money I want to have for a comfortable lifestyle, creating it all on my own? I have to do the sales, I have to be the accountant, I have to do the design, I have to do the marketing, I have to be blah, 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 all of it. Versus if you're a company, you're only one little thing out of the 10 fingers. It's a lot easier for you to just be like, well, I just show up here every day, drink a coffee, take a shit, and do a couple of designs, call it a day. You're all of it. You take on way more risk, but there's a greater reward possibly. But it's difficult. It's a lot of work. So I'm in that stage of, do I have what it takes? And I'm hoping to find out that I hopefully do.
Yeah. So when you first started your business, how was the registration process like for you?
I remember Googling around a lot, finding out like, okay, do I need to do this at all? And after a few like successful years in my business back in the early 2010s or something like that, my accountant's like, if you go over, I think 30,000, if you make over 30,000, you better start declaring this money and like getting HST numbers, registering your business, making this more legit. Because if you do that a few times, what's the Canadian IRS called?
CRA is going to come fuck you up if you keep getting all this money and telling them I ain't making shit. So I was like, okay, time to get legit. I was like, maybe like in my early 20s, I was like, I was excited. I was like, yeah, HST numbers, yeah, registration, a legit business. I'm the first business owner in my family. All this shit felt so like cool to me to get. I remember like paying like what, a few dollars, $75 online to register for your company name. The Ontario government offers a thing. They're like, you can pay this money and register whatever name you want. You can register Disney. Like, they'll take your money. But they're like, if you want to search to make sure no one else has Disney or Ian Made It or Speakerbox or any company name you got, you have to pay a fee. I was like, I'm already paying to register. I'm not paying another $50 for your search engine. This is ridiculous. I've already looked on Google. I know people don't have this name or not many people have it that it's going to affect me. So I just paid, registered. They mail you a piece of paper. You've got your business numbers. I'm like, cool. I'm legit. Like, it was not as exciting as I thought. Like, there's no ribbon cutting. There's no cheersing with my other employees because it's just me. It's me and a piece of paper at this point. I was like, okay. And you apply for your HST numbers. And then I was really excited about that. They're like, okay, you hold on to the 13% you collect, and then you pay maybe 10%. I think you keep 3. It was some sort of, I don't even recall the details now. But I was like, yeah, you got it. So like, I'm holding on to like $4,000 by the end of the year.
that they suddenly then take, and then they do your taxes and they take another 2 or 3 grand. I'm like, that wasn't very exciting. I liked it better when I made 33 grand and kept all of it, and now I've just paid 7 grand and went to nothing. I'm get to be official. Here's 7 grand. It felt like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I never did. So I'm registered as a sole proprietor. I found out doing corporation stuff like that, but then I hear the taxes are even bigger. It's a little bit more complicated. It doesn't seem necessary for the size of my business or what I'm doing, but there was just so much about it that like it was hard to understand. You had to read lots of articles online, find out what makes sense for me, what's going to keep me protected. Even the sole proprietorship is no protection at all, really. Like one,
no, it's actually kind of scary.
And destroy not only my business, but they could destroy my personal credit as well and take my own money. So I was like, oh, you can get insurance to protect that. And I thought about getting that when I had this one client that was concerned would eventually sue me. Not because I did something wrong, but because he had a history of suing people that he got into a disagreement with. Like,
yeah.
I knew I was like, I'm going to be next. This is going to destroy all my money.
Mm-hmm. So what was your thought process in selecting your business structure between the corporation and the sole proprietorship?
I knew I was just one guy doing this in my house. I thought that doesn't feel like a corporation to me. I might as well just be a sole proprietorship. Just
okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm wondering also, like you mentioned that you're a little bit worried about the limited liability issues. Because with a sole proprietorship, like all your personal assets are tied directly to it, and all your profits are tied to your personal income tax as well.
See, I was never even aware of that when I first signed up. I was like, yeah, I'm one man, sole proprietor, sure. It wasn't until years later someone's like, oh, like you're a liability for this. Like, oh my God. Why did I buy this piece of paper then? Why have I been paying taxes?
Yeah. Okay, is that something you changed, or are you still sticking with that structure at this time?
Still sticking with it currently, but will possibly change in the next few years depending on. I feel like if I break a certain dollar number in a year, and you do that 2-3 times, then I'd probably consider, okay, this is no longer sole proprietorship. It's over 70 grand. Maybe it should be a corporation.
Yeah. So part of it would be there's like a certain threshold, like where it's like a small business credit, where if you make under 500 grand, you're actually saving on the taxes. And also with a corporation, because it's a separate legal entity, your income is based on what you pay yourself in dividends or as a salary. So whereas with your current structure, all your profits are your personal income. So if you made say like 75 grand in like sales, you'll be taxed at the 75 grand rate. Whereas if you had like a corporation, you could pay yourself say like 22 grand to pay the bills, and then everything else is still in the company, and you own the company, so it's all under your name, but you have more room for your accountant to play around.
Yeah.
So it's
that's fantastic.
yeah. Things to talk to your accountant about to see what works best for you, given your lifestyle goals and where you want to take the business to.
Yeah, and that's I need to do soon. It's been on my mind of like the last guy I dealt with was a complete idiot. He could not give me any help.
Oh, the accountant?
Never again with this guy. Yeah, the accountant. I've had a few guys that were like great. They knew like all these like little insights and details, and I'd changed guys. And the last guy I used, he was just not the guy that did my taxes this year. He was not a benefit. Yeah,
and that's the crazy thing I realize is like sometimes it's not about the money; it's who you're working with, right? Because it's like, oh man, and you know all about this as a graphic designer. It's like if you go for, especially on service and knowledge based kind of like work, things that require taste and finesse. If you go for a price, a lot of times you get really hurt by that.
It was the lowest price tax man. He had motivational posters on his wall. I'm like, why do you have these? These are embarrassing. He's like, oh, they came with the office. I'm like, shouldn't have this shit. Like, no wonder I'm paying the least amount. I'm paying this guy 6 cents an hour for this crap.
Yeah.
He had no useful advice for how to run my company correctly or how to structure it in the logic.
Was he even operating legally?
He was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He was the closest to like an H&R Block. He was like one of those companies that has like 80 locations and they're like in the back half of a shitty mall or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motivational posters stapled to the wall. Oh, they were so painful.
Yeah.
So that's my guy. He's
yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
I guess just a piece of advice and something I had heard and I really liked, and then I did not follow. And now, 2 years later, I'm re-following it again. Is you can't move 100 things at the same time because they'll only go millimeter, centimeter, inch. But you can move one thing 100 inches, 100 centimeters, whatever it might be. So instead of trying to focus on, I want to work on this design project, I want to create this product, I want to launch this website, I need to build this app, and I'm going to do this in my free time and go to Burning Man and climb a mountain, blah, 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 blah. You know, but 10 things that you were only doing little tiny increments to or nothing at all is what I'd seen in myself. Like, I want to do all these, and I did nothing to any of them.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm now doing is picking just one thing at a time. Technically, I'm doing two and giving them my focus, but they're attached. So it's like right now, the last 4 weeks, 3 weeks, I've been building a website. And all these other opportunities come up for a product I wanted to create with this guy for a beer brand. It's like, oh, that sounds fun. I need to finish this one thing because if I start looking at all these other things, I'll start spreading myself thin and never doing anything. So I've been just doing the step-by-step of this website. I kept looking at step 10 and saying, that looks so far away, it's so difficult. But I would just remind myself that, okay, just do a little bit of work on it today, 3 hours here, 4 hours there, 3 hours there, and just knock it out piece by piece until it's 95% done. I'm going to have it launched like next week for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can then move on to piece number 2. What's the follow-up to that? That's building my workshop classes, the launch online. That's getting the photography. There's so many little steps that if I look at the top, it's overwhelming. So I'm just trying to keep one step in front of myself at every time. So that way I don't lose my mind and just stop working on them because I feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's working on a project or considering working on projects, just try and limit your focus to one at a time, 2 at a time. Just look at the little steps and just keep that in mind, because if you look at the big picture, it's going to fucking be too much for you to take in. You gotta execute it.
All right. Awesome advice. Well,
Yeah,
that brings us to the end. Thanks for being on the show.
Great. Thanks so much, man. Nice chatting with you.
And if people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
IanMadeIt.ca. Ian Made It on Instagram. And my name is Ian. Thanks for chatting with me. And I guess the Speakerbox podcast is also been working on. So speakerbox.ca. And yeah, Speakerbox podcast on whatever platform people like to listen to shit on.